Good morning, everybody. If you're out in the entry, come on in. We've got a super exciting class this morning. Lots of running around and cartwheels, mostly cartwheels. Everybody's doing the cartwheels. That's the exciting part. I don't know when the last time you tried a cartwheel was. They are more difficult than you think. Lila's been doing them, and she'll be like, "Daddy, do a cartwheel with me." And I did that once. The end. Good morning. I'm going to scoot this just a little further. We're going to be continuing on with the classes that have been happening. This is my first time to teach. I've got one more time in a couple of weeks. But this week, we're still talking about the tangible kingdom, and I've got three chapters that blend pretty well together this morning. The first chapter is called Paradigm, and basically what it does is it breaks down three different paradigms, three different views of how it's church-related, it's Christianity-related views or religion-related, I guess, and how we view things. And then the book offers a fourth view, a way that we can kind of change our paradigm to see things a little bit differently. I set up a nice little chart. I don't know everybody that loves charts. That's right. Spent some time in Excel, so everybody that loves that, fellow nerds, will meet in the nerdery later or something. I don't know. So the first one is why we believe. Why do we believe? That's the wrong way. Let's go back. Let me define the questions on the side are pretty easy. The ones on the top, Western or modern is basically everybody. I mean, like he says don't break this up by age groups, but it's probably 1980 and before would probably be. He doesn't say that specifically, and so that's a guess on my behalf. Eastern is everything that came from non-Roman Europe and Asia. When I say non-Roman, I'm talking like at the time like Constantine and before, so like the entire Roman Empire. So everything like Eastern Europe and then all of Asia, so that's Eastern. You'll see a very strong Asian preference throughout the pieces here. Postmodern is sort of Gen Z, millennial type, and before we get into this, there is not a condemnation on any of these groups. This is just like, hey, this is a way that they see this, and then we're going to talk together about a way that they can kind of blend, which is that fourth one. It's that gospel response, and that's what we're going to hit into that a little bit. So, the first one, why we believe. People, Western or modern, would probably is based off of reason. It's what you can prove. They believe in absolute truth and the truth that can be proven empirically and logically. Makes sense on that point? The Eastern is transferred through family or a trusted authority figure, and it does not need to be proven necessarily. It's just someone that it's the thing that has been passed down for generation to generation to generation, and that's why that's what you believe, and that's why you believe it, is because it has been passed down. The postmodern view of why we believe it is preference. It is all about I believe what I want to believe. There is no absolute truth, only personal preference. Okay, so let's kind of blend those all together, and we come up with what the gospel response is, and that's discovery. And discovery says that they can come to a place. They come to a place where they can see truth, find new trusted authority figures, and take time to make it their preference. And so it's called the discovery zone in the book. And basically what we're saying is when we come into this body, and I'm not talking about into this building, and I'm not even talking about being a member or being baptized. I'm talking about becoming integrated into a Christian group of sorts. What you're doing is you're giving people the opportunity to come to discover. Not necessarily, you're not teaching them anything, you're not throwing the Bible at them, you're just giving them the opportunity to come in and they can see the truth, meaning that they witness it in our lives and what we do and how we act and what we say, where we go and what we do. But it also gives them an opportunity to find new trusted authority figures, which kind of that Eastern pull a little bit. And then it gives them the opportunity to make their preference this. Okay, so we'll keep going. How we view relationships. This is going to go pretty fast, by the way. I want more discussion in this, and we will get to some discussion, I promise, but we've got to kind of hit through this pretty fast. How we view relationships. The Western is autonomous. Everything is compartmentalized. The example that he uses in the book is housing developers understand Western idea of autonomy, and that's why we have garages that we can go in and park in and then stop talking with everybody. We also have fences that are 6 feet high, which is just high enough that you can see the head of your neighbor, but you don't have to actually talk with your neighbor. You can still be in your own little security bubble all the time. Like I said, everything is compartmentalized. Each part of your life can be compartmentalized. So there's that, autonomous. The Eastern is a holistic, which is everything that works together and is interrelated. They view their lives already connected to all other lives. The Eastern paradigm is more hospitable, generally, and they also sort of believe in multi-generational homes. You'll have 2 or 3 generations all living under the same roof, sharing the same resources, working together, living together. So then we get to our gospel response, which is inclusive community. Inclusivity, which the entire book of Acts is about the idea of inclusive community, because whenever they go out, they go to all the corners of all the world to give the invitation to everyone. What you're saying is everybody can come to the table. No one is not allowed at the table. There are some hitches along that way, obviously, but no one is, just because you're Jewish doesn't mean you can't come to the table. Just because you've never heard of God or Jesus doesn't mean that you can't be invited to the table. That's how I should say that. It's not that you can't come, it's that you are invited. You are always invited to the table, everybody. This doesn't mean that we change who we are based off of outside influences. So we're not saying everybody come and then we'll put a melting pot of all of ideas and all the things that we can come up with, Christianity and religion and life and everything, and then we'll live off of that. We still have a truth in Jesus, and then what we're asking is for everyone to come to the table with us. Next is what we value. And what we value as Westerners is security, control, safety, and minimizing risks. He talks about all the different insurances that we get for all the different things. And he said 200 years ago, if your house burned down because your neighbor was playing with matches and set your house on fire, it just is what it is. You're not suing anybody for that. There's no home insurance. You just have to figure out how to get a new house. And so we've progressively moved more towards minimizing risk as much as possible. The Eastern idea is legacy. What they pass on to the next generation, whether it is faith, values, or wealth. The postmodern view of what we value is gratification and living for the now. And like it's really easy to say, well, that, just staying in the now moment. There's some very positive things about that, and that he talks about, and one of them is that they're actually trying to make the world a better place now. Like they're trying to make changes now, and they're trying to help people that are around them now. And so there is that portion of the instant gratification that has a positive spin on it, is that postmodern world is trying to interact currently with the people that are around them. So the gospel response is eternity now. So I'm just going to read this because he said it better than I can. In the 2nd century letter, this guy, who was the tutor to Marcus Aurelius, wrote the following about the Christian community. They dwell in their country, but simply as sojourners. As citizens, they share in all things as if foreigners. Every foreign land to them is their native country, and every country of their birth as a land of strangers. This early church would have been an affront to our Western paradigm of security. The Celts would have regarded our safe and isolating expression of church as as an apparent reflection of the risen Christ. The idea is we're going to delve a lot more into this, but the idea is that eternity is both forever and ever, and now. And what we're going to talk about here in a little bit is, I think that we do a pretty bad job, and if this steps on your toes, all that I could think about while I was putting this together is, this is all about me. I hope that this resonates with anyone else, so please don't think that I'm pointing at anyone, but I think that we do a pretty terrible job of doing eternity now and focusing on being Jesus to the people around us constantly. So, how we influence is through institutions for the Westerners. And what that means is we have taken cues from the military, from the government, from business, through structures, positions, and programs. People obeyed leadership out of either fear, guilt, or duty. And that's kind of how influence, the people that are higher up make the decisions, and we listen to them because they have to be smart or something to be in the position that they're in, so we take their word for it, and we, whatever. The Eastern is through traditions that are passed down through generations. Family, honor, respect, longevity are influential and demand respect. The postmodern is through deconstructing current systems. He says that, surprisingly enough, that you can gather the same amount of people together to fight against something as you can to fight for something. The deconstruction of systems has kind of been happening maybe since the mid-1960s, and as things became more corrupt, I don't know of a better way to say that, there were bigger groups fighting against the systems that were currently in place. And so that's kind of become the postmodern view, is like, let's take down the systems that are bad and replace them, but they don't always replace. It's more like that. The view is just to take down. So then our gospel response. Our gospel response is modeling. That's how we influence. And this is going to be a big thing as we kind of get into more of the end of this class. Modeling is just how it sounds. We can't be attractive to the world if we're just like everyone else. People will follow who they want to be with and who they like. And I know that the Christian faith in general is very big on, I'm going to stand on this truth, and if anybody wants to believe me or follow me, then they can come to me, and that's how I'm going to be. And no one's going to come to you if you're like that. No one's going to come to me if I'm a dictator about my views, if I'm not willing to come to meet with them at least halfway. So, modeling, being the people that we're supposed to be to show the world what Jesus really meant to us. And our last one here is how we measure success. When we talk about measuring success, it says here that it's the product. And so for the church, when we say, how do we measure success? Unfortunately, we could probably all go through a list of things that we measure success by. Hey, how many people were at church this week? What was your weekly contribution? How many people have been baptized? Those are things that the way that we measure. Those aren't necessarily good ways of measurement in the church, but we do measure it that way. The Eastern view of success is the process. Staying in the process, continuing in the process, that is your success, is being on that journey. That is your success. And then the postmodern is the way that they measure success is they want to work to live instead of live to work. And they have a peace of mind, a reason to wake up, and a good supporting community. And that's, for the postmodern world, that's considered success. So the gospel response, which is much like the Eastern view, is about the process. And it's transformation. And transformation takes place this much at a time for all of us. And for the people that we're around and for the people that we're modeling to, the people that we're bringing into our communities, the transformation happens bits at a time. And so we want to go out and Paul says that we're to go out and we're to plant. And then God does all the other parts to bring the plant up. But what we want to do is we want to continually water and water and water and water and then figure out why the plant's dying. Because it's me, like I can take care of this, instead of letting the transformation happen on God's time and in God's ways. So it's more up to God and way less up to me. He writes a quick recap in here that says, the incarnational big story gospel will require a place of discovery where people will be able to see the truth before they hear about it. This place will not be a location, but a community of people who are inclusive of everyone. These people will be making eternity attractive by how they live such selfless lives now, and will be modeling life in a new kingdom in ways that will make it easy for other people to give it a try. People like this aren't desperate to convert everyone. They are desperate to be like Christ and to be where Christ is. Their heartbeat is to be transformed into the image of Christ and to pray and work for the little specks of transformation in everyone and everything they touch. Success is faithfulness. The rest is up to God. And I thought that summarized it pretty well. We're going to move on to something a little bit different. Do you guys have any questions, comments about what we see up here? Anything that you want to argue with? I mean, I'll argue with you. It's not even my book. I didn't write it, but I thought you were raising your hand, Zach. I was ready to call on you. That's...
I know. I have lots of thoughts on it. I think it's really interesting. I like putting a name to stuff.
Yeah.
Because I see myself on the left side and hopefully more on the right side than the left side, but I see myself in different parts of all those. I think it's really interesting when you look at the gospel response how appealing that piece looks. You know, if you took that just in a vacuum.
Right.
But I'm interested to see where you're going with it, to see how we compare, what I grew up with the way the gospel tells us to do it.
Right, and that's the fun part about this was reading through all these different pieces. Like he gives paragraphs about each one of these that I tried to summarize this morning. But when he does that, there's some of these that I'm like, I can't believe people would act like this. And then the next paragraph, I'm like, well, that's me. And he's definitely calling me out. Well, and what's funny is, one time it'll be for the Western, and I'll be like, well, that's me. And then the next time it was the Eastern, I'll be like, well, I feel like that's a lot more me than the other ones are. And then I have a little bit of postmodern in there too. But you're right. Like, when you put it, if I took everything off there and I said the gospel response is how, like, this is who we need to be to the world, like, that's really, like, it's not bad. And also, when he says here, success is faithfulness, the rest is up to God, that also takes quite a bit off your plate. All I have to do is be faithful. All I have to do is be the person that God wants me to be while I'm around other people. And if I do that, then that will cause transformation in the world, because I will be living such a different, exciting life that people will want to be a part of that. So I'm going to ask a question, and then I'm going to answer it. But what I want you to do is I want you to chime in with other pieces of this answer, but I want to kind of lay a foundation. And the question is what is the gospel? What is the gospel? Zion and I were talking, and I said, if I was going to define the gospel, what would I say? I would probably say it's the news that Jesus came and died for our sins so that we could have a chance to be with him in heaven someday. And now I will open it up. Do you have more to offer than just that? Like, is there more of an answer than what I just said? And I mean, like, I could talk for an hour about just that piece of it, but is there other parts that I'm leaving out? What is the gospel? Yes, sir.
The gospel is that, but I think you're leaving out the reason that we're all here today.
Go on.
Is the fact that he not only died for our sins, but rose again to reign over us and to be our Savior for eternity.
Sure. Yes. And I don't think that takes away from the first part. That's all. I think it's all together. So yeah. Like I just didn't say that. So you're right. That's 100% right. Anything else to add to that? Yes, sir.
I would also add that it's, by definition, it's a proclamation of something that happened.
Yes.
That a lot of other world religions, it's about a system of beliefs, but the gospel is a proclamation of something, of an historical event that happened.
Correct. Yeah. This is proven. This is true. That's what we have. I am 42 years old. If you look at me, you might think he's probably no more than 17. So I'm 42 years old. I was born in 1979. I'm telling you guys that for a very specific reason. These are things that I grew up with that turned on me pretty hard the older that I got. We'll start with something that is less invasive. The summer of 1998, there was a baseball duel between Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa, and it was to break the home run record, and they just kept hitting home runs, and they both got over 60 home runs, and it was this huge, huge deal. Well, only to come to find out they were both juicing. They were both on steroids or performance-enhancing drugs, and so being a child in the 80s and the 90s, I only knew Michael Jackson as the king of pop. Come to find out, things weren't super great with that guy. He was universally loved and worshiped, and then things come out years later about how awful some of the stuff he was doing was. I grew up watching The Cosby Show. The trials and accusations against Bill Cosby are awful, absolutely awful. There was an inspirational story from the 90s. Did you know that you could lose hundreds of pounds by only eating Subway? And if you don't believe me, ask Jared Fogle, who's currently in prison for child pornography. So we have all these, the list of those kind of things are endless, where we have these things that we look at that are so great, and then afterwards you go, well, I mean, like, that's horrible. For people that are fringe Christians, or fringe to Christianity, or have no church affiliation whatsoever, the Church of Christ and the Catholic Church and the Baptist Church are all religion. They're all the same. It's just a place. It is a place where we talk about God. We could bring up the scandals from the Catholic Church, all the sexual things that have happened to kids in that. And that's not pointing necessarily just to the Catholic Church, because that happens in all the faiths. We could look at TV evangelists who preach so much on the prosperity gospel and what it means to, if you send me money, then you'll be better off, which is just a hoax and awful. We could talk about religions that look a little bit like a cult, like Mormonism. I didn't say it was. Or we could talk about an actual cult like Scientology. And they all fall under that big umbrella of religion from the outside. If I tell you that Christianity offers the good news and you've heard about any of those others, then we don't actually have good news. If you're not living a different life to the whole world, then our good news of saying, hey, at some point in the future, you can go to heaven if you believe now and then do all the things that we say that you need to do, that's not attractive. No one's going to come here, and that's why the church numbers across the country, across the world are dying, because we're offering a gospel that no one cares about. Is the gospel important? It's the most important. Absolutely the most important. But the message that we're sending about the gospel to the world is that at some point in the future, something good might happen to you if you're a part of our group. That's not the gospel. The gospel calls us to live in such a way right now that doesn't just change our hope for the future, but changes the way that we live today in the present. I know that I have not been the gospel to people around me. And that was a hard pill to swallow. So what we're going to do is we're going to go around and I want you to tell if you were the gospel to everybody that you've been around lately. Do we want to do that? We probably don't. I'm just going to blanket say that we haven't. If I'm wrong, come to me afterwards and we'll talk about that. Unfortunately, we have fallen into the pit of, in the future, things are going to be good, and for now, I'm just going to go to church and do church. And what we're not doing is we're not getting out and we're not meeting with the people. I've got one more chart. There's a lot on here, and so I promise we'll get through this. So there's two different, there's the way that we have always, and I say always, everybody in this room has always done church. It's not always, but like for us and our history, we'll say always. And that's the one on the left. That's the attractional approach. And what we really want is we're going to put together such an awesome thing that you will come to us, right? So we're going to give the best, we're going to have the best preachers, we're going to have the best kids classes, we're going to have the best song leader. You guys do, but whatever. We're going to have the best of everything. And so because our stuff is awesome and so cool and fun, then people will want to come and be a part of that. Well, what I just talked about a second ago with our gospel message not really hitting home with a lot of people means that this attractional approach is quickly dying. All of us were brought to church through this probably. I say that. Most of us probably were. So it says unbeliever is invited to church. So take that if you grew up in the church that your parents brought you to church, okay? You confess your belief. He says you repeat a prayer. For us, it would be baptism. Then you join the church. Your cognitive discipleship ensues, which means that you have to start learning. You've got to learn every verse in the Bible, and you've got to learn all of the traditions of your congregation or your faith. And that's what. And then the focus becomes on counting confessions. As long as we are, at the end of the day, as we pray for confession, that we repent, and so that's what we focus on. And believing enables belonging. As long as you believe what we believe, you can be a part of our group. The incarnational approach, which is on the other side here, says a sojourner is invited to belong, which means that what we do is we go out and we have these people, this person in our lives, that all we're doing is just bringing them into our lives. Okay? Piece by piece, little by little. This isn't church. He says that he discourages people in his church from inviting people just to come to church. Because if you just come in and see it from the outside, I have no connection to any of you people, none of you mean anything to me. It's super easy for me to leave, and I don't care about any of this. Okay. They're invited to belong. Once you've spent time with them, and I'm not talking about as long as you spent a few hours with them. He talks about early in his ministry, he had a 2 coffee rule, that if he didn't have the prayer of acceptance after 2 coffees with somebody, he just kicked the dust off his feet and moved on to the next person. Which, it's obviously that's awful, but we kind of think of it like that. If I don't feel like I'm making success or having success immediately, then I'll move on to somebody else, instead of saying, well, this is a person, and just like all the other friends that I have in the entire world, I didn't get to know them over 2 coffees, and I've spent a lifetime getting to know people, so that's what it's going to take. He talks about people who are just starting to get through their transformation, and it's been a couple of years, 3 years, that they're starting to get to this. So then they confess interest. They want to be a part of your group. Not church still, just your group of friends. So interest in the group, this is kind of jumping around a little bit, but our group is our community. This is our community. Our generator group, we have a lot of fun. We've done some studying. A little bit. We've hung out a lot more than studied. Those guys are awesome. And so at some point, I feel like we're going to probably try to bring somebody into that group, and not for one of our Bible studies, but for one of the times that we're just hanging out. And we do that enough, and they say, hey, I like being a part of your group. Can I keep being a part of your group? Yes, you can be a part of our group. That's great. That is them confessing interest. They get to experience the good news because our community, not just me, but the entire community is working to be like Jesus, and they are the gospel, which is working for eternity now. We then have Experiential Apprenticeship. What he talks about in the book as far as apprenticeship is very interesting. He says that he's a church planter, and to make ends meet at certain times in his life when funds have been tight, is he's a house painter. He paints the outside of houses. And he said, if I was going to teach you how to paint in the attractional approach, where it's just discipleship, where I want you to know what I'm doing, then I will have you sit on the tailgate of my truck, and I will go over and I will tape the windows, and then I will paint, and I will tell you all the things that I'm doing all the way through the process. In an apprenticeship, what I would have you do is I would tape a window, and then now you have to tape a window. And then I'm going to show you how to hold the sprayer correctly to make sure that we're doing this, and then you get to go up on the ladder. Because I don't want someone who knows how to paint a house. I need someone who can paint a house. I want to make sure that the way he says this is really if I wanted to apprentice you in being a house painter, then I would call you off the tailgate. I'd hand you the tape gun and tape and make you do a window. Then I'd give you control of the paint sprayer and help you up onto the ladder. I teach you everything you need to know about every aspect of doing a paint job, because my motives are different. I would only apprentice someone whom I am going to depend on to do what I did. My goal is to make you a painter, not just someone who can talk about painting. And if we translate that over, our jobs aren't to bring people in to talk about what Christians look like and how Christianity is, but to be Christ followers. And I think that we don't do that enough in our bringing in. I think that, and this is me as much as anybody else, I have been, come to the place where I'm at. Come to me. I've got this really great thing going on, but if you'll come to me, then we can do this, instead of me saying, I'm going to come to you, and we're going to do this thing. We're going to be in this together, and we're going to grow this relationship. The focus becomes transformation, and belonging opens up our discovery zone that we talked about in the other, and it offers an opportunity for believing. I've got a couple of points to close here, but what do you guys think about all that? That was a lot. It was a lot for me to read.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
This really hit me, this last bit, because there's a church I drive by several times in the week that has signs along the roadway, and one of them says, and I've seen it before, and I've kind of dismissed it and thought, well, what are they thinking? The sign says, belong before you believe. And I've read that every time I've gone by, and every time I've gone by, I said, that is not how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's never been the way
Right.
I thought it was supposed to work. That's never been the paradigm that I've grown up with, that as a minister that I preached, as an elder that I encouraged. That's never been it. And now I've got to rethink it. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Yes, sir, Rod.
I think it's important to just put a pin in that. This incarnational approach is not a bait and switch scam.
Right.
It's not a 10 ways to trick somebody into Christianity. I think one of the important things that he says in the book that hit me a decade ago was that relationships with unbelievers who will never believe can still have value.
Mm-hmm.
And they're still valuable.
Yeah.
And so you approach every relationship like that. And so, sometimes it turns into that.
Yes, that's exactly right. Our investment into something doesn't make it better if they end up coming to church with us. My job, like I said earlier, my job was to plant seeds, and it's not to water and then water and water and water and water and water and watch that plant die and figure out why it's dying. He's absolutely right by saying it's not a bait and switch, because what this gospel now, this eternity now view means is that we are different with the people that are around us. And I'm not trying to bring you in and then, you're part of our group, now you got to do all the things that we want you to do. You're going to see what our group does. And you're going to have the opportunity to make a decision about being a part of our group all on your own. And at the end of it, if you're not, we're still going to be friends. So that's a very good point to make. Yes, sir.
It just seems interesting that the left-hand side is all about believing. We're working toward belief, working toward belief, working toward belief. You get to the very bottom, it's like, okay, now you belong. And the right-hand side, we're all about trying to belong, trying to build relationship. And then at the very bottom, we can start working on believing.
Right.
And it's an interesting dichotomy.
Correct. Well, and I mean, like, it to make it personal to me, when I read these lists, it was like, oh, hey, this is the list of all the ways that I've done this, always, and then the way that is probably going to make a much bigger difference in the people that I'm in contact with on a daily basis. So.
The Celtic Christians in that was Ireland and Scotland did much more on the sojourning side.
Right.
They would come into a village that didn't have a church. They wouldn't start building a church. They'd go stand at the well and find out who needs help, and then they would go help that person for free. They would go help do whatever it is.
Right.
And they'd be there months working alongside the entire village, and the village became used to their presence and willing to listen that way.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
You and I talked a little bit about how this belonging and investment, like this is how we treat our kids. And that's, I mean, this is why I'm here too. Like I belong to a church well before I believed, and it makes perfect sense to think about it like that.
Right. Yeah. Like we bring our kids into this, and like they're part of our group, they're part of our family, both blood and church. I trust most of you with my kids. That's a joke. Clark would ruin some of you, that's all I'm saying.
I want to say one other thing too, and it was earlier when you said at some point you might want to like invite somebody to your group.
Generation or generator group.
Generator group. And you and I spent some time overseas, and there was a point where we're in a foreign country and not speaking the language, but somebody comes in, and it looks like all the people who speak Thai, what we were talking, it looks like all the people know this person that just came in. It looks like they're old friends, and we find out later that like actually this was a stranger that just walked in and nobody knew them.
Yeah.
But like to us, their body language, the way they were talking, it looked like they had known them from the start.
We were playing games, just one of the nights, and I mean like there was 30-ish people, and it was loud, so it was like spilling into the street, and someone just was like, sounds like a good time.
When a sojourner confesses their interest, and they're like, hey, I think I'd like to be part of this group, and I think it should probably feel like, well, you already are. You have been.
Yeah. Anybody else? My job is not to browbeat anyone with Scripture until they concede and say that I was right all along. My job is to provide a place of belonging and let God do the work he told us that he would do. We are seed planters, the end. The most important piece in all of this, and I talked about it a second ago, is community. We are a community here. It would probably behoove us to spend more time together. And I know like there's lots of people here who do, like outside of this or organized events, hey, just hang out, and that's great. But it would probably be in our best interest to continue that on more and more. That's a lot towards me. I, every other week at this point, just because my work schedule, I only get to be here every other week. But I'll stand up there and lead singing, and it has gotten to a point where I know about 50% of the people that are in here, and I am so bad about fixing that and reducing that percentage. This isn't people who are here for a first time. It's people I've been like, well, this is like their 9th week here, and I probably at some point should go say hi. But we like putting up our walls and, doing our own thing because bringing other people into our lives is messy and hard. But I think that it's time that we become a closer community and through that, change the world. Yes, sir.
Just want to add, as we do things with each other, we have to keep enlarging that group.
Yes.
Because no matter how hard we try, we still have individuals that get between the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
They get lost and forgotten.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge. You have to really be on your game to realize who is falling between the cracks and who's being forgotten.
There is nothing about Christianity that should be easy. Not a single thing about it. It asks you to do everything different than the world and to give up all of your own interests for everything else. And so when we talk about finding people who are slipping through the cracks, like that's hard sometimes. It's hard to find those people, and it's hard sometimes to make contact or make a connection with them for one reason or another. That doesn't mean that we don't do it. Go do that. Do these things. Be Jesus to the world. Yes, ma'am.
The unbeliever invited to church, that kind of bothers me because when I was a kid, my brother invited a kid that he knew to VBS. And we were all excited about that. Well, because he invited that one kid to church and VBS, then he got his parents to come and they became Christians. And then his grandparents became Christians just because of that one uninvited to church.
So you said, who was it that invited him, your brother?
My brother.
So did they have a relationship before?
Kind of. They were just kind of friends, but not real close.
So that's what I want to point out is that it wasn't strangers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I think that we see that, and like to a certain point, that can still, like that idea of just like, hey, stranger off the street, why don't you come to church with me? Every now and then, a blind squirrel in a nut. I mean, like you're gonna hit one at some point, but the chances that it's somebody that we have a pre-existing relationship with before, because it goes to the kid. Well, now the kid's there. Well, if the kid's there, I mean, like the parents have to at least figure out what's going on with this. Like you have to get a little bit involved, and so then if you see this community that, oh, hey, I mean, like this is actually a pretty good thing that they're a part of, then the parents become a part of it. And then the grandparents go, well, I mean, like, why are all you lunatics joining this other group? Well, let me figure out what in the world is going on. And it's the domino effect. So yes, they did, I mean, like, it is that way. And I'm not saying, I don't want to say don't invite people to church, but maybe don't invite people to church. People that are familiar with Christianity, maybe they used to be a part of the church and they're not anymore. Those are the people that are the easy ground to just go out and find. Yes, sir.
It's the same reason why, like, street preachers have so little success. I mean, what they're saying is not untruth. It's not incorrect. It's just that literally they're expecting, oh, I said the name Jesus, so you should be flocking to me.
Exactly.
What I have to say. They look like crazy people up there going, oh, if you don't know repent, you're going to hell, as people are walking by and they're like, yeah, you're nuts, I'm not gonna.
Right. Zero relationship.
Yeah,
Zero
you've got to have a
relationship.
relationship first.
Yes.
Whatever depth that is, you've got to
Yeah.
know somebody before you can just beat them over the head with the Bible and expect them to submit to you.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and it's a matter of respect too. You demonstrate respect for the person that you're talking to. I mean, I'm not likely to give much attention to somebody who is disrespectful toward me.
Correct.
I'm likely to lash back, but I'm not likely to say, hey, great, why don't we go for coffee, or, you know,
Right.
or, I really like you a whole lot, maybe we can find out how come you don't like me.
All of those pieces, the relational side of it is, I mean, like, it's multifaceted in that way, and so it's important for us to do that. I think I'm over on my time, and that's how it's going to be. It'll probably be like that in 2 more weeks when I do this again. Thank you guys for your participation. I really do appreciate it. If you didn't go to first service, I'll see you at second service. You're dismissed.